Here we're going to do like a twofer here. So we're going to have myself and Steph do this presentation. So a bit of background on me. So I'm just in the process of finishing my PhD at the Vet College here in Guelph. My PhD was based on basically the project that validated and published all the protocols that are being used for the animal care assessment animal-based measures portion. So we went on 240 farms and tested them out and got a good benchmark and an evaluation on how the protocols are going to work. And then I went on and looked at adoption of new practices related to cow comfort and all that good stuff. During that process, I also got hired full-time by Novus. We're a feed additive company with some minerals and amino acids, which is supposed to help with maintenance and immunity and things like that. But the problem is, as many of you know, no amount of mineral you're going to throw at cows is going to solve the problem that starts on the farm, right? If the cows are in 6 feet of manure, mineral's not going to help them. And that's where we've developed a value-added service to go on farm and assess cow comfort. Basically everything. We do lying time, we put loggers on cows, lameness, injuries, et cetera, et cetera. We've done that across North America, so we've done a ton of farms in the US. I'll be able to show you some of that data. And then now we're doing it in Canada abroad. I've also got the contract with dairy farms in Canada, where I've been contracted to train all the assessors that are going to be doing the animal care, animal-based measures assessments for ProAction. And that's what we're going to talk about today, the lameness, for both freestall and tie stall, the methodologies, what they're looking at, and what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. So that's my background. Steph kind of did part 2 of the project that I was originally a student on, so she can explain what she did.
Sure. So I don't know how many of you have heard about the National Dairy Study that occurred last summer, but I was working with faculty at OVC as well as actually across all of Canada from different veterinary schools. And my portion of the National Dairy Study was looking at lameness and animal care based measures. And we tried to do the methods almost identical to what the animal care assessment's doing in order to kind of start a benchmarking process to look at some areas, potential issues with that. And that's exactly what we did. And actually Clem did the training of my study's assessors. There was 14 of them that went across Canada. And yes, I think it kind of will fit nicely with what you guys are going to see in the future here. So we'll show some of those results.
She's also a vet. She did her degree in Florida, so she's an American. But she's going to be presenting the Canadian data, and I'm going to be presenting the American data. We're switching up. I'm Canadian, so it's kind of weird. But anyway, so just a brief description of what we're going to cover today. So we're going to be looking at why care about lameness, first of all. Just a brief introduction about why it matters. You guys all already probably know this. We'll talk about lameness prevalence in North America, so where the levels are at based on the research we've done in the US and in Canada. Then we'll talk about gait scoring, basically, then we'll talk about producer perceptions, which also include your perceptions. When I go on farm and ask what the level of lameness is on your farm, what a lot of producers will do is go get their trimming records and count up the number of cows that got wraps or got treated and say, this is the number of cows that I consider lame. And we'll talk a little bit about that and how producer perceptions might be a little bit off from what the actual level of lameness is on farm. Then gait scoring protocols, and then the install lameness protocols. Do you think producers that are tie stall, that don't put their cows on the pasture, would be okay with letting all of their cows go to gait score them? No. How many of them do you think would be thumbs up? No. So we had to develop methodology to actually gait score them in their stalls. It was started in the UK, and we actually validated it live here in Canada to use for ProAction purposes. So we'll go over the methodology. You'll get exposed to what that actually looks like, the behaviors we look for in determining that. So why does lameness matter? Why do you care about lameness? Why do we care about lameness as an industry?
It's costing the farmers money.
Money. So there's a money bucket over there. So obviously it interferes with profit, but how? Why? Why does it interfere with profit? How does it cost money?
Reduces feed intake.
Reduce dry matter intake, reduce water consumption. What about fertility? To reduce fertility? Is lameness a painful thing for cows, potentially? So pain causes stress, right? Chronic stress. Even mild pain does cause chronic stress, which can reduce fertility, definitely reduces dry matter intake, everything else. So we've got the reduced fertility for both mild and severe cows, published, validated. We've got increased risk of culling, obviously, which is going to be a little bit expensive if you're culling cows early. Reduced milk yields because of lower dry matter intakes and lower reproductive efficiency overall. What about the welfare implications? So we talked about how ProAction is a consumer-based kind of consumer confidence, quality assurance kind of program. Is lameness a welfare issue? Do you think, what are the top 2 welfare issues in the industry today? For dairy cows.
Lameness.
Lameness is one. I'm going to say that. What's the second one? What do people always talk about? Mastitis, antibiotic use. Usually, udder health is usually another big one, mastitis. Now, if you were to put on your consumer hats, and I'll pretend that you're soccer dads or hockey dads or whatever, that are pulled off the streets of Guelph, what do you think the 2 highest welfare issues are for them in dairy cows?
Antibiotics?
No, not really. Sometimes, but based on the research, that doesn't often come up as in the top 2. It's probably in the top 5. Pasture is a big one, and cow-calf separation is the other big one. Right? We don't think about it because it's just a given, right? But separating cows and calves and taking that milk usually comes up very regularly. So it's interesting that lameness doesn't quite come up often even in the top 5 for dairy cow welfare at the consumer level because they haven't been exposed to it as much. So right now we're at the point where we can address the problem before it becomes a huge mainstream issue, and we need to. This is the time because videos are popping up on YouTube all over the place. And we're at that point where we need to address lameness, and we need to address it sooner than we are now. So, Kelly mentioned fraction targets, right? So this is how it's going to work, essentially. So cows, after the 1 year mark, when assessors have been evaluating farms for about a year and have about a year's worth of data, they're going to be split up into percentiles. Green is the top 25%, yellow is 25 to 75, and then red is the bottom 75%, okay? So after the 1 year, if you get your evaluation and you're in the red, you're in the bottom 75%, you need to actually write a corrective action plan to try and address some of those issues, whether it be in lameness or in hocks or et cetera. If you're in the top 25, you're okay. And in the middle, you don't necessarily have to write a plan, but you do have to show signs of improvement. So the excellent, the target is to have less than 5% of cows be a body condition score of 2 or less. Have less than 10% of cows that have severe hock, knee, and neck injuries or are severely lame. Okay, 10%. Obviously, right now, that might be a little bit of a stretch for some farms, so they're using this percentile. And eventually, over time, we're hoping that the industry will gradually move from the bottom to the top, and then we'll eventually evolve those percentiles, right? Is that everything? Does that make sense? That's how this is going to work. So, when we talk about lameness prevalence in the U.S., I thank Steph for making this beautiful slide. Leave it to the Americans on the
You
biggest
could
flag.
have at least put a little Canadian flag.
I made one for the next one.
Oh.
Oh, there's Canadian. Don't worry. It's coming. It's coming. So, this is the data that we pulled out for our lameness assessments in the U.S. So each color is a different region in the U.S., Northeast, California, Midwest, and open lots, which are like dry lots for dairy cows. And then each dot along that color is an individual farm. So lameness prevalence on each farm ranges from just over 0, so there was no farm that had no lame cows whatsoever, to all the way up to close to 80%. And that includes moderate, like mild, moderate, and severe cows altogether. Okay, there's a huge range. What do you notice about the Northeast? Or worse. When you think about the Northeast in terms of farming style, how do they compare to Canada? Very similar. Wisconsin farms compared to Canada. Different. Wisconsin has 30,000 cow dairies, right? We don't have any 30,000 cow dairies that I know of. We have big ones, but not that big. So in the Northeast, they have a lot more small, like their industry is much more similar, their housing styles are much more similar. We go to California and Texas, their farming styles don't even compare to ours. And our industry standards really, I think, based on what Steph is going to present, we are much more like the Northeast in terms of what our level of lameness is. So we have to be worried. The challenge here is that when we actually split up that level of lameness between mild and severe, so each individual farm is each individual bar is a farm from the Northeast. The amount of yellow is the level of mildly lame cows in that farm. The red is the severe. What do you notice about this graph? Where's the bulk of the lameness? Mild, right? The bulk is mild. What do you notice when the more mild cows they have, what else do they also have? More severely lame cows. Where are those severely lame cows coming from? They probably started mild and got worse. Unless, a cow stepped on a nail and is suddenly acutely very lame, that's that. But generally, there is a trend here, right? Farms are very good at identifying the severely lame cows and treating them or culling them. We can achieve less than 10% of that fairly easily on most farms unless they have serious issues, which production will address. But we're not actually stopping the source, okay? We're not identifying these cows soon enough to prevent them from turning into fours and having a constant supply. So that's where gait scoring lameness assessment really helps with that, identifying those mild cows. Now, if we switch it over to the Canada flag here, I'm going to switch it over to Steph to start talking a little bit about the Canadian data.
Let Albert take a picture of that.
Oh, yeah, I got it. I'm not anti-American, I'm just very pro-Canadian.
I got it.
You Twitter that.
Hey, I'm playing hockey now, so I'm picking up on it.
Get the good stuff.
Okay. So the National Dairy Study, as I mentioned before, last summer, it was a huge project that encompassed a lot of aspects that Kelly mentioned before, including biosecurity, traceability, and also animal care portions as well. As I mentioned before, it occurred across Canada. It was one of the first studies like this of its kind. Similar, I don't know if you've heard of NOMS in the States, where they're getting representation from all states. And here, same thing, all provinces. So one of the things I wanted to iterate to you before we actually begin going through some of the data is that we had a survey go out to all producers in Canada, about 12,000. We got 11% response rate. So we had about 1,164 producers respond. And of that, we went to 375 farms across Canada. 374 farms, actually. And with that, we also had a 3-day training period for 14 assessors to ensure repeatability and reliability of these tests. So, and it's the same training that Clem has done for Holstein Canada as well. So this data is representative of what you probably will be seeing in the future. So once again, this is the number of farms that we went to in each province. And so all the data I'll be showing to you is coming from these provinces, including Ontario and Quebec, where we had the most farms in Canada already. So it makes sense we saw 133 and 121 farms there. So this graph is representing the prevalence of lameness on farms in each of these provinces. The prevalence of lameness is mild to severe lameness. So this is the 3s, 4s, and 5s. So as you can see, Ontario, where you guys are mostly working, is an average of 22.2% lameness on each farm in Canada. That's just an average, with the range being where the whiskers are, and 50% of the farms are in the blue box there. So majority are in the blue box, and then 25% above the whiskers and 25% below. This graph, actually a little bit hard to see, I think, on this wall. Yes?
I mean, that's quite a big difference for Quebec.
Yes.
What was the reaction on this?
So I don't know where.
I mean, that's a huge.
Yeah, we actually haven't published. Yes. Yep.
This is double.
Yes. So one of the things that we asked was, was there a difference in the assessors that went out? No, we looked at repeatability data. The assessors scored the same, and actually, if you look at the point, we had assessors scoring in Ontario up in that range. There's some outliers there, so they were capable of scoring there. So there is a difference there. We also looked, I should have saved the other graph. There's another graph or a photo that I took with tie stalls, free stalls, and pack barns. And the tie stall farms, on average, had about 7% higher lameness, and there are a lot more tie stall farms in Quebec. So we think that might be playing a role as well. We're also looking at some other risk factors for things, but there was a difference.
Just to pause, Steph, why do you think tie stall or lameness in tie stalls is higher?
You're saying that's a fact?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
it's a fact.
It's hard to recognize.
I just asked her quick and that's
Who's farming it?
They don't see it. The cow's standing there, she's milking.
That's
right.
So-
She doesn't have to walk to eat, she doesn't have
She's
to walk to
still
milk.
Do you think lame cows can survive longer in a tie stall than in a
Oh,
free
yeah.
stall?
Yeah, big time.
Which means that naturally there will be more lame cows in tie stalls, right? So
The
that, and that's been repeated time and time again. Lameness,
The best studies for tie stalls are, they're only at best within 7% of free stalls. That's the best that the tie stalls have been able to do, but most times they're over the free stall rate.
But we tend to have more lesion in freestyle than in tie stall, is that correct?
Yeah, we have more lesions.
The part of the problem is, we haven't defined what lameness is for everybody.
so,
That's
and
the
we're gonna
problem.
get there. And we're gonna get there. Because hoof health, to me, does not equal lameness necessarily. Hoof health is part of lameness, it is not all of lameness. Okay? So we will get there.
Okay, so then we wanted to, for this study, we surveyed the 1,000 producers, and we asked them what percent of their cows are mildly lame and what percent are moderately to severely lame. And then I wish this was clear, sorry, but what's dark is what the producers estimated for lameness on their farm. So each of these bars represents an estimate of lameness and what they thought they had versus what we actually went out and measured on farm. And this was a point prevalence. So we measured lameness on one day, and there could have been up to a 2-month difference in when they estimated their lameness versus what we saw. However, it is a snapshot in time, and I think, as you can see, there's a pattern here. So most people are underestimating lameness in both tie stall and free stall. So this graph here represents tie stall herds. And if you're questioning the 100% lameness on that farm, the assessor commented on that. They said all the claws were incredibly long and all the cows were limping. So that was a situation that this assessor saw in the study. So I think reading that comment helps to clarify that a bit, but just a point to throw out there.
I think the two farmers that were over the average, I'd like to meet those guys and have them,
I'm not sure if I want to.
And then if we look at the freestall herds, we see a similar pattern, except that more farmers are at least more closely aware of what they have. Now, granted, there's still a lot of underestimation going on there, and this is the same. So this research is showing that farmers are missing 2 out of every 3 lame cows, and most of this is the mildly lame cows. This data is the same that they found in the UK back in 2002 and in Northeast US in 2006. Farmers are missing 2 out of 3. Yeah.
So I guess I have a question. Where are the hoof trimmers?
That is the question, isn't
Telling
it?
the farmer this?
Yes.
I think that's our job.
That would be a great opportunity.
Or did you guys choose herds that don't have trimmers yet?
Now, see this.
We asked those questions though on the survey, so there's more analysis. This is just preliminary data at this point, but we did ask how often you have a hoof trimmer come. We asked some questions about maintenance versus treatment and how you handle that. How quickly when a cow is lame do you pick up the foot? We asked that question, so that data will start to come out, and as it does, hopefully it'll get shared. We're sharing almost all these results on the National Dairy Study website, which is being developed now. And as data comes out and as things get published, you can go there to look at this, which is pretty unique because it is representing all provinces in Canada. Yes.
So your yellow is the one that you estimate, right?
This is the one we
And
detected.
You say mild and
It included, so the yellow includes mild and severe.
so so it's expected there is a difference there, right?
Yes, if you look back at the graph that Clem had here, it's quite similar.
Yeah.
So what they're identifying
Yeah, that's
are the red cows.
Exactly.
What they're missing are the yellow cows.
Yes.
Okay. So the other portion of this is we wanted to look at the accuracy of the farmers. So this bar graph here represents, the top right represents overestimation of lameness, and the bottom portion represents underestimation of lameness. If you look at this 20% point there, and you pay attention to the thickness of that line, we're going to look at the next graph, which will be tie stalls, and you can see that it's a bit thicker there. So what we're seeing is that more farmers in the freestall are more closely estimating their lameness on their farms accurately, at least. So it's still very much underestimation, obviously, but yes.
Sorry, can I ask you, did you do the same things just considering the severe lesion and see how much it would be the underestimate of that data?
We didn't, so
Because maybe it's just that they record a different data, like you would say they record only severe lesions, so they may not underestimate that piece, but it's just
yeah,
a different
this would probably be a lot more accurate if we were just looking at severe lameness, that's true, but
Why is
I mean,
that less important?
Because you guys.
No, it's not less important, just
Well,
maybe they are just recording something different.
Right.
So you are comparing
Apples
something
and
that is
oranges.
for them with something different.
You have been trained to do that. The producer is not.
right.
Well, that's
So
the issue, though.
that's
But
the
why
thing
is that an issue?
No, I don't know.
I'm just throwing it out to the group. Why is it an issue? Why is the fact that they're underestimating their total level of lameness a problem?
because we're only getting the firestorms at the end.
The ones that most of
And
the time can't
we
fix.
can't get the subclinicals. Now here we can, we're fortunate, we can do whole herd trims here, most of us can balance, but, I was down in New York State for a week with Cornell doing training down there, and let me tell you, it is, they can identify, when we train them, real easy how to identify a 2 or a 3 lane cow. What they can't do is find a rear tag. Because when 600 cows are coming down the walkway, we see them, but you can't get in to find her.
I do it for work. Sometimes I have to do it. I identify cows. It takes practice. It takes a lot of time. It's time consuming. This is the issue, right?
We were trying to get them to do this in the quiet times, not when you're trying to process. It's not a.
I think part of the biggest problem too is though that what is normal is over the last, let's say, 15, 20 years, now guys see, okay, here's my cows in my herd, and yet every farmer has tunnel vision, just like we in our business, we have tunnel vision, and this has become the new normal, yet that's not actually normal. So until the education gets out there, guys are gonna underestimate because they don't know.
The abnormal has become normal.
Exactly, right? If cows always walk like this is just how cows walk.
They see them every day, and it's like.
Yeah, and those are the challenges, which is why we're doing this research, to just highlight the fact that there needs to be more extension done to help producers identify those cows earlier. The earlier, it's like a tree. If all you're doing is cutting the outlying branches, and you just want to get rid of the tree, cutting the branches is never going to get rid of the tree, right? You need to go down to the bottom to get rid of that tree. You need to get it to the roots. This is what we're trying to do, and identify those limitations on our level as extension people to help address some of those issues that farmers are facing.
And I think, yes, we could have just looked at severe lameness, and what producers' perceptions were. But the point is we're trying to highlight that they're missing these mildly lame cows, right? So we're trying to get that information out there, and really, I went to a producer meeting and showed some of this data, and they said, man, some guy said, oh, I should start looking. I don't actually look for cows regularly, right? I just kind of, when they're coming into the parlor, I'll pay attention. But you can't pick up mildly lame cows if you're not really actually focused on that, right? So just highlighting this fact I think is good, and as we continue to produce more data coming out and as pro-actions coming out, I think this is going to be an amazing opportunity for all of you, as well as the cows and the producers. So this will be good. Why aren't they seeing this? I wanted to see if, is it a confidence issue in scoring? So I asked them how confident they were in scoring mild or identifying mild and moderately lame cows and identifying severely lame cows. And actually, all across the board, they're relatively confident. I would say an 8's pretty confident in my opinion. Now this is an average, and there was a range, and I'm going to look into the data to see if individual farms who had really low confidence, if that affected their ability to accurately score, and if the ones that were quite high. But I think with the average being like this, something's getting missed, right? So they think they're actually pretty good at identifying these. And then if we look, and I thought, okay, well maybe we can further investigate these lines and see, is there a difference between the tie stall farms and the freestall herds? Actually, the tie stall farmers think they're actually quite confident in identifying their mild and severely lame cows. I thought there might be a difference there because they don't see them walking as much, especially if they don't have exercise pens or something like that. But once again, it's sort of the same data. So right now I'm going to pass it back over to Clem.
Okay, this is where we're going to talk about what I'm calling lameness, okay, and what we've been calling lameness throughout this presentation. So Kelly showed this image here with this cow from the Flower and Weary publication, which actually validated the 5-point scale we use commonly. Now, behaviors like head bob and spinal arch, or back arch. You heard of those? Those are the most common ones we talk about. Okay, we always talk about the back arch. We talk about the head bobs. You go to Zimpro, they're really big on this back arch or flat back cows. Go to the cow signals, they're really big on the back arch. The challenge here is that head bob and spinal arch are only really most common in severe cows. Okay, not all mildly lame cows show an arch back or a head bob. Okay, where we actually identify those cows are more in cows tracking up, so that hind foot is stepping in the footprint of that front foot. Full fluid movement and joint flexion, swinging in and out. If it's really bad, you see cows only walking on their inner claws, right? And asymmetric step or reluctance to airway. That's limping. That's the big one. Okay? You can have very mildly limping cows that are just slightly sore that don't have a head bob, but they are still stolen. So these are great and producers are really good at these. They know those. They can pick those up. They're picking up on the severe cows. They're missing a lot of those mildly lame cows that aren't showing some of those more nitpicky behaviors. Yes?
I think it's important too, like some guys will look at a cow, they'll chase her, and she'll go like scamper across. Well, she's not lame, You gotta watch her when she's just in her natural state, right? And then you'll see that little subtle thing. And I think a lot of it gets missed. Like I see it all the time where I'll be like, "What about that cow there?" And they'll go chase her across the alley. Of course she's gonna
runs
run,
off.
right?
She gallops
She
away.
is mildly lame,
Now,
so.
does hoof health, does the number of lesions or white line disease or laminitis equal the level of lameness on that farm? Yes or no? Is the level of abnormal foot going to be higher or lower than the level of lameness we identified?
It'll be higher.
It'll be lower.
Oh, really?
So there's a lot of lameness that occurs that has nothing to do. When you think about a cow on these pedestals here, the foot is the bottom of the pedestal, probably one of the more important pieces. Then there's the joints, the shoulder and the hip, and the knee and the hock. You've got the back. If you hurt your back, are you gonna limp? Yeah, there's nothing wrong with your foot or your
Oh, I
leg,
see what you're asking.
right?
Okay, yeah.
So a cow's gonna walk with a limp or gonna walk in discomfort. She might have nothing wrong with her feet, but it might be somewhere else in that cow. What will cause those kinds of issues? Poor handling, cows falling, slipping, running around, that'll cause a lot of lameness issues. What about uncomfortable stalls? Really tight stalls. If you have to sleep in a really small, tiny bed, cramped up, your whole life, and then you get asked to walk, to go to feed. When you're walking to go get dinner, you're going to be a little bit crampy, right? You're going to be sore. You're going to show discomfort, and that can play a huge role in the level of mildly lame cows in the herd. Okay, that won't necessarily directly link up to severely lame cows, but cows that are not walking normally can sometimes be linked to really bad stalls, right? So hoof health is a huge component. I'm going to say easily 70 or 80% of the lame cows on a farm probably have something to do with the foot health problem, but there's a good portion that completely okay feet and are walking in pain. We need to identify those reasons as well, right?
Yeah, I just want to bring up a comment too, that when we're doing the lesion profile, a lot of people have been, I'm gonna say abusing our Ontario study and the Alberta studies. They've been saying, look at all these lame cows because of the lesions. That's not an appropriate comment because a lot of us, we are trained to do like minor lesions, either heel erosion, hemorrhages. They're not causing any pain, but a herd could have a high lesion rate but not
Exactly.
be lame.
And as a
very
welfare issue, what are we most concerned about?
pain,
Pain.
pain mitigation.
And the easiest way to detect if there's animals in pain is to watch them breathe for this, as opposed to.
But there is gonna be animal variation in terms of
Yes.
the pain pressure.
Yes.
Some animal will, maybe
Yes.
they're big injuries still walk well.
Yeah.
But, you know.
And there isn't much we can do about that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. But for the
But
most
the
part,
lesion will be more an objective, that's what I'm saying.
potentially, yeah, but not all lesions are
No,
painful.
no.
And so that's the challenge. So gait scoring is the most consistent way to identify any cause on farm of lameness, whether it be hoof health, whether it be poor handling, poor stalls. Cows aren't moving right, there's a problem, okay? And then it's up to the producer and up to you to determine where that's coming from, right? As a team. So trimmers, vets, nutritionists, they should all work as a team. They shouldn't be working against each other, right? To help improve the herd health. So this is how we've categorized this. This is a 5-point scale. So 1 is a completely sound cow. I'm going to tell you right now, I see very few cows walking as ones in indoor systems.
Experience doing install lameness detection with techniques, specific techniques for that. Okay, so 1 person, 2. Okay, so Clem and I have developed videos for gait scoring and for install lameness detection, and they're going up on the National Dairy Study website. Like I said, the website's underway, but the install lameness assessment that I'm about to show you today, this video is already up and running. The website's not, but the link is. The link will be at the end of this. You guys can write it down. But it actually is my narration with the video, so you get to hear me live today, and then if you want to repeat the series, you can listen again. But just so you know, before we begin, that you can look at these again. And I know a lot of people don't have experience with it, so I think it'll be really good reference. Okay, so once again, this is going to be install lameness detection. And
Put
it
that
was.
back for a second.
Yes, I
I
can put
was
it back.
too slow to check here.
Oh, sure.
Good.
Okay.
This is why I'm sitting here.
And once again, these videos were taken from the Cluster 1 project. And so for install behavioral indicators of lameness, we're looking for 4 behaviors. The behaviors are rest, shift, edge, and uneven steps. And then through these videos, I'll take you through each of those. But before we begin going through those 4 behaviors, I'm going to kind of describe to you some basic principles. You'll want to recognize that you have to have 2 of those 4 behaviors present to call a cow lame. So it doesn't matter which 2 of 4, but you have to have 2. So some basic principles to go over before we begin is that one of the biggest things with install lameness detection is that a cow has to be standing for at least 3 minutes before you assess her. Okay? So if you go into a barn, they're all lying down, you're going to have to get them up, wait 3 minutes before you score a cow. The other thing that you want to make sure is that anticipatory behaviors, such as when the feed truck's coming or they're milking, you want to avoid those moments because cows are shifting and moving and doing a lot of dancing there at that point. So I don't think it's a fair time to be assessing for lameness indicators. You want to stand where you can see all 4 feet and watch for 90 seconds.
And that's to stand from the back, not the front, just
Yes.
to clarify.
Yeah, so you're standing behind the cow. We should add that. So if the cow urinates or defecates, disregard any behavioral indicators that you see 5 seconds before or after the excrement. Only record behavioral indicators once the cow has returned to normal standing posture. And this is because sometimes they'll arch their back or take a step when they're urinating or defecating, and it's also not a fair point in time. And this has been verified in research. So now we're going to review the 4 behaviors to look for during the 90-second observation window. And we're going to start with the rest behavior. So the rest behavior is when a cow picks up her foot and places it down in the exact same position. This can be a full pickup of the foot and set down, or it can just be the heel coming up and then resting it down again. And I'll show you some examples of those 2 situations. And this can happen in the front or the hind feet.
Doesn't count if she's licking or kicking you.
Yes, sorry. So in this example, she picks up her foot and places it down into the same position.
You're saying
That's a rest.
So this one is. Those first 2, not so
The
much.
first
that
one
is.
wasn't. Sorry, can you back that up?
Yes.
So in my narration of the video, I say the first one she takes a slight step.
So
I don't know if you noticed that.
So
but
you'll
in-
see she moves her foot, right? She moves it forward and then she moves it back.
Right,
That does not count. That's a step.
right.
Does not count as a behavior. Then she actually legitimately lifts her foot and puts it back down in the exact same spot. And that would be counted as a rest.
Right here.
But if she's doing that multiple times in a row, doesn't that show discomfort?
Yeah,
Yes.
so yeah,
Oh, okay.
you'll be able to tell. And you only record the behavior once. You don't have to record how many times you see it.
Yeah, if you see it happen one time, you saw 1 behavioral indicator. And like I said, you have to have 2 different ones. So either a rest or a shift. You have to have at least 2 of them present to call a cow lame. So that would be, once again, this one she picked up her foot and only the heel came up and went back
Did
down, but
everybody
that's
see
still
that?
a rest.
So that's just the heel lifting up and back down. That counts.
That's a rest. So same exact position. She lifted her foot all the way up but went in the same exact spot.
Now this is a cow where you'll see her kind of do it repeatedly, right? So she kind of floats her foot. Okay? So that would all be considered a rest. You just note it once. If you see it, you note it. You don't record how many times.
So this one's not a rest because she moved her foot backwards. Did you see that? We're going to watch it again. It's going to repeat. So she picks up her foot. It looks like it's almost in the same spot, but she actually takes a slight step backward. So once again, did you see that? So that is not a rest. That's just a step. I know it's quite particular, but it has been verified looking at gait scoring as well for reliability. The next one is a shift. So shift behavior. This is a 4-beat process. It's either right, left, or left, right. You have to have all 4 beats to have it considered a shift. And once again, this can happen in the front or back feet.
So it's this kind of movement, right?
It's a shifting of weight, if that makes sense. It's one of the more rare behaviors, so we don't see it very often. It took me a long time to find this in a video. That was good enough quality to show you guys today. So what you'll see is repeated movement starting here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Did you see that?
So just back and front, not.
So this is side to side, right, left, right, left.
So this is one where it's only 3 beats. So that was 5 or 6. She only beats 3 here. 1.
No, right here. Ready, watch. 1, 2, 3. If she had done 1 more of those, that would be a shift behavior. But she only did 3, so you don't count it. Does that make sense?
Why would we count 4 and not 3? I know. People are like, what? Where did you arbitrarily choose 4? So that's to minimize the false positives, right? Because we found that with 3 beats, sometimes that's just an anxious cow or anxiety related. When it's 4, that's much more tied to an actual lameness problem when we gait scored the cows afterwards. Okay? So to minimize false positives, that's where you put the line. To minimize false positive, that's why we also identified 2 of the 4 behaviors to consider a cow lame. If she just rested her foot, like cows are living animals, they're going to move, right? So if she's resting a foot, you're going to see it very commonly. If she only shows that and nothing else, she's okay. She needs to show 2. And that's to get those cows that are truly lame.
So the next behavior is an edge. This is when a cow is resting her front of her foot at the edge, thus the name, of the stall. So you'll see her heel hanging over. You have to be careful with this because sometimes there's straw or something hanging over, so it looks like she's not on the edge, but she actually is. You'll have to pay attention. So here on the left-hand side, it's a little tough to see because we're coming from behind, but we turn the camera angle a little bit and you can see that her heel is hanging off the edge of the stall. Here's another very clear example where the heel is hanging off the edge. And once again, you also have to be careful with the rubber mats as well because they'll be hanging off the stall too. So you want to make sure that the weight is not on anything. Does that make sense? The last behavioral indicator is uneven steps, and Clem's going to walk you through this example.
So this is the most challenging one. Uneven steps is the one people have the most tough time with. So that's when we finish with everything else, we move the cow side to side, and look how evenly she's actually bearing weight on each hind foot, okay? So it's easiest to do when you have someone else moving the cow for you and you can stand behind her and look. So uneven weight bearing between hooves when the cow is encouraged to move to side. This is demonstrated by greater and rapid movement of one hoof relative to the other. So a cow, when she's moving side to side, she'll do something like this or something like that, right? A cow that's uneven will do something like this, okay, and kind of fall to one side or the other, or she'll do this kind of like antsy step over because she's so sore on both feet. We're looking for any indications that she doesn't want to bear weight on one or more of those hind feet, right? 1 or 2. There's only 2. So we're going to show examples of that. So I want you to tell me which foot she's sore on. She also has a big scar, so that also helps. But she's sore in that left hind, right? So you can tell she's kind of hesitant to put weight on. It's not super obvious, but it's there. Now another example. I want you to tell me which foot she's sore on in here. I'm hearing a lot of both. Left rear for sure, but she's hesitant on that right as well. Okay, she's kind of sore and she's doing this kind of antsy, and then she kind of starts shifting a little bit. So these are 2 very obvious ones. You can have much less obvious examples of unevenness, and you have to, with practice, you understand what an anxious cow moving over really looks like versus what a sore cow moving over looks like.
That raises an interesting point. Often I go to a farm, and well, not often, but I go to a farm and the farmer will say, I just had the vet check this cow, she has a really bad foot. And then I'll say to the farmer, if she has a really bad foot on one side, always get the vet to check the other foot.
Why?
Because there's likelihood, because it goes into the system to the other side.
Right, so if she's sore on one foot, is that other foot getting a lot of pressure?
It's getting tired.
Yeah, so then you'll start seeing issues in the other foot, and that's very true, and that's a great tip for everyone in the room. Now, when we're asking a cow to move a tie stall cow to move side to side, do you think that the side she gets milked on might have an effect on that? Right? So if she's very used to moving right, because that's the side she gets milked on and she's used to that, and very unused to getting moved to the other side, you'll start seeing some imbalance, right? So she'll be very quick to move to one side and a little sore and hesitant to move to the other side. You need to be able to differentiate that from her being uneven because she's sore, right? And in person, when you're doing it live, you will be able to tell. It does take practice. Same thing with an anxious heifer who's just jumping around because she's scared versus not wanting to put weight on her foot. It takes practice to get there, it takes time, but you will be able to differentiate it.
And that's why, again, we have to have 2 of the 4 behaviors present. So in case you saw it here, and maybe it was a false positive, you still have to have another behavioral indicator present.
Okay. So again, most importantly, like Steph just said, you need 2 of the 4 to consider a cow lame. Yes.
So, in the case of the tie stall, if she has 2 of the 4 behavior, will you just say lame or not?
Yes.
So you don't have all the 5. So that could it be that maybe the Quebec percentage that is so higher is because the way also in which you are defined the lameness, that is kind of different between the 2 things.
Well, yeah, except that for this methodology, the cows that we missed, so when I validated last summer comparing, I visited cows that let their cows out, or farms that let their cows out on pasture to walk, right? And I scored them in their tie stalls before they left, okay? And then got rid of that page, forgot all about them, didn't record them as IDs or anything like that. Put numbers on them after about 20 minutes or an hour, so I kind of forget what was going on. And then I watched them all walk, okay? And I gait sort them individually. And I picked up with the install lameness method 80% of the cows that I considered lame when I walked them. So I actually missed cows. And the cows that I missed in the install lameness method were the mildly lame cows, the mild 3s, okay? So, yes, they're not completely different or completely the same. I am missing some cows in the install.
Also, to your point, though, I think the biggest thing is for the National Dairy Study, the one where you saw the results for that, we included mildly lame cows. So 3s were part of that. So it was 3s, 4s, and 5s, not just the unacceptable. Whereas, so it is going to be a bit different results there.
Yes. So for tie stall, we're actually a little bit more lenient. We're looking at 3s, 4s, and 5s. When we're just looking at 4s and 5s, what ProAction did, and this is a big question with ProAction, we're going to be identifying more lame cows in tie stalls because we are picking up on some of those 3s as lame. We can't differentiate them and calling them unacceptable versus in freestyle where we only call 4s and 5s unacceptable. We disregard the 3s, right? So it is a bit of an unfair system, but we have no alternative unless tie stall guys want us to walk all their cows. And in a situation where they do walk, that is the gold standard, okay? In a tie stall farm that lets their cows on pasture, classifiers will be asked to go when they are walking the cows to get the best estimate.
In the National Dairy Study, any farm that did walk their cows around milking time, we actually did do gait scoring instead of tie stall on the tie stall farm. So they were still recorded as a tie stall farm, but had the other method used.
Yeah. So it's the best we got. Yes?
Seasonal effect on that?
Seasonal effects. So there will be fly cover issues, right? So if there are a lot of flies on a farm and the cows are kicking because of the flies in the summertime, you will record that and note that. Most of the time you can differentiate a sore behavior from a fly behavior. That takes practice and experience to do. But assessors, when going on farm situations like that, they will make notes saying, we saw a lot of rest, but it could be because there was very strong fly cover. In which case, that farm should probably take precautions to address that fly issue, fly burden. Now, summer versus fall, when do we see the most lameness? Fall. Fall is the highest level of lameness we identify. So there will be seasonal effects to the level of lameness that will be taken into account. For ProAction, what we're really looking for is farms with problems, right? Like it doesn't matter. Usually those farms, the seasonal variation won't change drastically enough to make a farm that has a problem not have a problem in the spring versus the fall. They usually have a problem throughout the year, right? So those are the farms that for this program we're really trying to emphasize on. Okay, so I think at this point, based on timing, we're going to head out to the barn and we're going to practice the tie stall methods on tie stall cows, and then we're going to go gait source some cows in freestall. Okay, so I'm assuming everybody, or I don't know where Ann went. Oh, right there. She has procedures to follow for booties and everything else. Yep.
Also, the video is at the nationaldairystudy.ca/videos, so that will have commentary. Yes. Yes, they are not yet, but Clem is actually going over my narration in English with the French.
Everything is available in both French and English for the training materials for DSC, and they will be. Some of these videos will be provided in French on the NUS website. I will. Yes. Yeah. On cement or on rubber, it's slippery. It's hard. Cows are going to be adapting their gait, they're not slipping, right? So they're more likely to be tubes, which is imperfect gait. They're being a little bit more careful, but they're not sore. They're just being careful, right? They're a little stiff. They're a little older cows too. If they're a little bit stiff and not showing significant pain in one or more limbs, I call them tubes, right? As you get older, you do get stiffer. That's normal, natural.
Yeah, trust me.
We all know. We're all probably twos in here. Me myself at this age. I've aged myself the last week. This last week has put 10 years on my life.
We're not done with you yet.
Then the 3s. these are the mildly lame cows, right? Those are the cows that are the ones that are in the yellow in the graph that have a slight limp. Sometimes they have an arched back, walk with shortened stride. They're mild. For ProAction, we don't want to call those cows unacceptable because some are really mild, right? There's a whole range. We're slotting cows into these categories, but lameness is a continuum, right? Goes from very, very mild and perfectly walking cow to a cow that can't move. That is a continuum. And we're slotting them in these categories. So there's really mild threes and there's more severe threes, right? But the threes, we're just reporting for ProAction. We're reporting them separately. They're not calling them unacceptable. They're just reporting them as mildly lame cows. They will be slotted into the acceptable categories for the benchmark for now. Fours are the moderately lame cows. So those show an obvious limp, an arched back, and a jerking head bob. Those are the red cows that most people are already detecting, right? So those are considered unacceptable. And the fives, I also see very few fives on farm because those are basically immobile cows. They're cows that can't put weight on a foot. They're literally walking on their toe or can't move at all and need to be very, very strongly motivated to move. Those are usually already in the sick pen or being shot, right? So I don't see a lot of those in milking herds. So the bulk of lameness we're going to identify, or the bulk of the scores, most cows will be twos, most of the lameness will be in the threes, and then those really bad cows are the fours that we're considering unacceptable. Okay, so we're going to watch a video to kind of highlight